members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on public service. Agenda item 1, information papers issued since the last meeting. No information paper has been issued since the last meeting. Agenda item 2, attracting young talents to join the government. Let me invite the representatives from the Civil Service Bureau to join us. They are Mrs. Ingrid Young, Secretary for the Civil Service, Mr. Clement Leung, Permanent Secretary for the Civil Service, and Ms. Eureka Chung, Deputy Secretary for the Civil Service. Please refer to LC paper number CB bracket 3999/2024/01 and LC paper number CB bracket 3999/2024/02. There is also one information paper submitted by the Government Employees Association. That's LC paper number CB bracket 31028/2024/01. Welcome, Secretary and Permanent Secretary. Secretary, please walk us through the paper. Thank you, Chairman. The government has been providing good career development opportunities for those who aspire to serve the community and join the government. This is to bring new blood to the civil service, and we strive to nurture staff to succeed at different levels in the long run. We have rolled out different promotional campaigns, and we've adopted a multi-pronged approach to attract young talents to join the government. In terms of publicity works, we have strengthened promotion locally as well as overseas. There are hundreds of grades in the government. There is a job or position for young people. We strive to enhance young people's understanding of civil service work. For example, we hold or take part in the Education and Careers Expo. We also hold the Government Career Fair. We also go to the mainland to launch promotional campaign and introduce to the young people there the different positions within the civil service. In the mainland and overseas, we introduce to people posts that are not widely known, for example, posts in the Civil Aviation Department. We also try to work with different young people. For example, we were invited once by a young people association and attended a conference between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Last week, we also attended a sharing session. These allowed us to tell good stories of civil servants and enhance image of the civil service. On the other hand, it allows us to enhance young people's understanding of the civil servants' work and encourage them to join the government. We ask different governments and departments to make manpower planning. Last year, we wrote out a new measure to expand the pool of eligible candidates to university students that are in the third year of study. We have already selected 60 penultimate year students, and they are given conditional offers. We will roll out training for them to groom them so that they can be better prepared to join the government. Next year, we will roll out the digital common recruitment examination and basic law and national security law test. This will help speed up the recruitment of candidates. We also provide short-term internship opportunities to broaden students' horizon, enabling them to gain practical experience. For example, the Environmental Protection Department offers internship placements about climate change. The RTHK also offers internship placement opportunities in relation to news reporting. This provides diversified pathways for young people. In 2025, we plan to offer about 4,000 internship quotas. On nurturing talents, we attach importance to providing diversified development opportunities for young people. we provide opportunities for civil servants to work in the mainland, overseas, and different places to broaden their horizons. For example, with the central government support, we send officers to different organizations under the UN to work. We also send officers to work in different international organizations such as the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Secretariat, International Criminal Police Organization, and so on, to provide rich experiences for civil servants. This is also to enhance the public management ability of civil servants. We want to nurture more civil servants that are patriotic. These measures have taken effect, and we have seen an increase in the number of applications. For example, the number of applications under the CRE and BLNST exams, the number has increased by 30%. We will continue to launch different measures to encourage young people to join the government. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. 5 members have pressed the request to speak button. They are Mr. Ronald Chen, Mr. Benson Look, Mr. Chao Shiu-chung, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, and Ms. Nixie Lam. 4 minutes for each member. Questions and answers inclusive. Mr. Ronald Chen, please. Thank you, Chairman. I understand the government has done a lot of work to attract young people to join the government. In particular, Secretary mentioned that there must be one position at least that's suitable for young people. I have questions about recruiting young people, mainland and overseas. You mentioned that every year there are about 1,200 people applying for civil service posts. How many of them succeeded in applying for a civil service job? Also, compared to candidates from Hong Kong, are these young people in the mainland or overseas stronger in terms of their ability? Also, you mentioned that at least 40 government departments or bureaus provided 4,000 internship opportunities. The police force and the FSTB provided the biggest number of internship placements. We are facing a manpower shortage. With so many interns, are there enough civil service servants mentoring or providing guidance to these interns? Should you wait until there is sufficient manpower to recruit so many interns? My other question concerns the internship program for non-ethnic Chinese students. Since 2019, there have been 50 such interns, and now we have about 180 of them. And to become an intern under this program, it requires nomination from the university. Are there any criteria for universities to nominate these non-ethnic Chinese students? Will you open up more opportunities for these non-ethnic Chinese students? Also, how many of these interns have ended up joining the government? Secretary, in terms of recruitment exercises held outside Hong Kong, they are mostly held in the mainland and some places outside Hong Kong. I don't have the relevant statistics in terms of their success rate. This is because these recruitment exercises are held by different government departments and bureaus, and I didn't collect the statistics from these departments and bureaus. However, I can share with you my general observation. We have talked to the higher education institutions in the mainland, and we are told that these students, they rarely have the chance to speak English at schools. And English is part of our entry requirements. And some of them may not be able to fulfill our English proficiency requirements. So we've talked to the higher education institutions in the mainland, and they offer many career support to their students. they offer English courses to their students to help them pass the exams. Also, there are quite a number of students who want to join the police force, and the police force has offered them a lot of information. They hold fitness exercises and exams. Some of the students may not be able to pass the fitness test. However, students can practice on their own before joining the test. For students overseas, they are scattered in different places around the world. They apply for different jobs under different grades. So it's hard for us to have an overall idea of what kind of difficulties they encounter. For those who have finished 6 years of studies in Hong Kong secondary schools, they should be able to meet the Chinese proficiency requirements. However, for those who have moved overseas or abroad since a young age, they may not be able to fulfill the Chinese proficiency requirement. This is the first point. In terms of internship, we welcome different grades to receive interns or offer internship opportunities. For those with a lack of manpower, they still have to try to recruit interns. They need to deploy manpower to design exam questions and organize interviews. So they have to bite the bullet. So we ask government departments and bureaus to deploy manpower to recruit students as interns as well as offer guidance to interns. And these are all very helpful in terms of ensuring sufficient manpower in the long run. So this is what each government department should do regardless of the adequacy of manpower. In terms of internship program for non-ethnic Chinese students, we offer internship opportunities to these non-ethnic Chinese students, and I have to admit that there's just been a digit number in terms of the number of non-ethnic Chinese students who have finished the internship program and ended up joining the government. This is because we require a certain level of Chinese language proficiency. In 2023, apart from internship opportunities, we also offer Chinese learning opportunities for non-ethnic Chinese students so that they know what kind of level they have to attain in terms of their Chinese language skills. However, within just a few weeks' time, it's hard for them to reach that level in order to pass the recruitment exam. We, however, hope to motivate them to continue to improve their Chinese. We've started this since 2023. This is because previously we had talked to them and I realized that their Chinese language skills were not enough, and a lot of them only managed to reach the beginning level in terms of their Chinese language proficiency. That's why we want to do more to train them. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Benson Look. Often the time we can see that the administration is facing this manpower shortage problem, and then they're trying to attract talents, in particular the young people. Well, they have also worked very hard, as we can see from the paper. Different departments and bureaus have also increased the number of places for internship, and we can see that for the AO grade, they have actually increased that to 60 because about 10 years ago, I also joined that scheme and there were only 26 and now they have increased that to 60. So I think it's a good thing. So with regard to the government's attempts to attract young people to join the government, I have three concerns. First, I can see that the SAR government has now adopted this approach by widening the recruitment channels. For example, during the penultimate year, there can be conditional offers to these young people. And right now, some 60 young people have been recruited that way. But then I'd like to know which grades are they? And also, the SAR government initially approved a number of conditional offers, but then in the end, you only managed to recruit 60. So I'd like to know the effectiveness and the percentage of recruitment by this way. And also, in terms of stepping up training programs, you said that you have different programs to nurture talents. In fact, late last month, I also asked an oral question with regard to nurture training, and I particularly emphasize the importance of language training for civil servants because we have the Belt and Road Initiative and there are new markets in particular in the Middle East and also in the Arabic language countries. So I'd like to call upon those who are interested in joining the government. They would also have to step up language training, in particular Middle East languages, Arabic languages, and also Belt and Road countries' languages and so on. Thirdly, is about life planning. I can see that you've also gone into universities to do career talks to help students with life planning. But then when it comes to life planning, actually that should start at senior secondary school because they are also faced with, choice of streams. Many students would say that they like to become lawyers and also doctors and so on. But then many might also be interested in becoming civil servants. So when you go to schools to do life planning career talks, so you can also encourage young people to get prepared to become civil servants later on in their lives. Three questions, Bureau Secretary. Thank you. With regard to penultimate year students, if they are interested in joining the government, how many conditional offers have we made? In fact, almost all who have been offered conditional offers have accepted. Only a very small percentage of them declined the offer. And then in the end, how many of them would actually join the government? Of course, we expect all of them to report duty. And then after they have accepted the conditional offers during their holiday breaks and so on, we would also arrange internship opportunities for them. So we don't just wait till they have graduated before we contact them again. So for those departments who would be hiring them, when they have time, they would also be asked to familiarize themselves with the operation of the departments and so on. So that would continue. So for this particular scheme, I believe that it's been very successful. Whether or not 60 offers have been good enough, since this is the beginning of the scheme, and we believe that for the first year, that has been rather successful in my view. Every year, for those taking the enrollment exams, for example, the CRE and also the BLNST. For university or undergrad students, in fact, you're talking about penultimate year students. I think the number has gone up already. For example, last year we did that, and this year, every year we do offer this test to undergraduate students, and penultimate year students have also been very enthusiastic in taking this exam, and about 30 grades have had such opportunities offered to students. The reason why they are doing that because these are posts that would have no difficulty for fresh grads to join, and then for penultimate year students, some 30 departments are offering these to them, and that has been very useful. Second is about language training. Indeed, the government has been providing language training to civil servants. Within the government, we do have internal training, but then what's done more often is that we would subsidize colleagues so that they'd be taking training programs offered by external institutions, and of course with the suggestion by Mr. Benson Loka, we would also consider including Arabic languages and also Middle East languages in our training programs. Next, about life planning. Well, for students enrolling in universities, a lot has been done about that. But then for people joining the civil service, the CSB would also be looking at secondary or high school students with diplomas or certificates if they're qualified to apply for certain jobs. I have to admit that the number of jobs that would be suitable for them would not be that many. But then during career exhibitions, we have also got kiosks set up specifically for high school students. I also recall that senior secondary schools have also taken students to our booths to listen to our talks. And then for secondary school students, they might have their own favor. But then as to the benefits and also the number of holidays, and well, they might not be that interested in those, and therefore they might only be interested in what they're going to do, and therefore we will have to use more lively methods to introduce to them different civil service grades and jobs and so on. For example, even for those that are not that hot, not that popular, for example, at the AFCD and also at the government properties agencies, there are also jobs that might be interesting, and therefore we have asked colleagues to do short clips introducing different jobs and so on. We have done that through social media as well, so that for those young people who are interested, they would also be able to see that, and then even the teachers can also introduce to them. So if you take that stream of studies, then you can also apply for these jobs and so on. So for those who are interested, in particular, for those jobs and grades that are less popular, well, we would also like to introduce to them. You also talk about the 30 plus grades and so on. Can you briefly tell us what they are? Well, I can also give you a list after the meeting. Next, Mr. Chow Shiu Tong. Thank you. I also welcome that the administration would step up its efforts in attracting more young people to join the government. The first question I have is about the administrative officer grade. You also had an internship scheme. In 2022-23, the administration hired some 52 AOs. But then at the same time, the wastage rate was 45, including 12 retiring, and then 32 resigned. And then I can see that for out of the 32 who resigned, 23 at the time of resignation, they were only in their 40s. So the AOs are the backbone of the administration, but then the wastage rate has been quite high. I believe that through this internship scheme for administrative service, well, that might increase the enrollment rate. And in particular, I hope that the wastage rate can be reduced because they have already familiarized themselves with the operation of the government, and therefore they should be more willing to stay. And I believe that between 2016 and 21, 150 AOs have been recruited, and 25 were actually interns. And then the success rate of enrollment were quite high. So during the past year or past 5 years, out of the interns, how many of them have actually applied for the AO grade? And then what's the success rate? That's the first question. Second, concerning the fact that different departments have been offering several thousand internship places to young people. And last year, you also said that after they have completed the internship, they can also join the mentorship scheme. And then some colleagues also talk about whether or not you should set up alumni association in order to step up contacts with these interns. I'd like to know, after they have graduated, what's their inclination or preference for career and so on. So that would also help us in coming up with better recruitment strategies, or even increase the attractiveness of the jobs which might be of interest to them, so that more of these people will be able to join the government to serve the community. My third question is, in recent years, the policy address often says that we will have to promote the development of young people, and one of them is that we would have to engage more young people in participating in the work of the government. And I can see that the Security Bureau has done a lot. One of the things that they have done is that, well, they have also got this uniform groups set up under individual departments. And this year, there was an undergrad student who has been nominated to go to the United Nations forum to talk about Hong Kong's anti-narcotics work. And I think that's remarkable. But then the Security Bureau might have done a lot on this. But then what about other departments and bureaus? So does the CSB do any coordination with the Culture and Youth Bureau so that more of these can be done? So that even for non-uniform groups, they can also be offered more such chances to showcase their talents? Yes, Bureau Director. Yes, I can see that many of these have been very popular with undergrad students. We have done some surveys. About 1/5 of those AOs that we have recruited have gone through the internship program. So they have done this ASIP, the Administrative Service Internship Program. So that has been rather successful. And then for the interns, after they have completed their internships, have we done any follow-up with them to find out whether or not they would still prefer to join the AO grade? Well, for different grades, we have several hundred departments and several hundred grades, and different departments and grades have offered internship opportunities to students, and different departments would have different approaches when it comes to internship and recruitment. We do encourage students to apply for these jobs more proactively. The setting up of alumni association and so on might not be a very effective way, because after all, they just went through some 8 weeks of internship program. It's not very long. And then every year we have several thousand interns. So when they come together, they've only got 8 weeks to work together. So would that be a very good way to put them together or get them to contact amongst themselves? And of course, different departments would look at their own needs to get in touch with those interns. And then after they have completed the internships, before they leave, and even after they have left, there might also be mentorship programs to maintain contacts with them. And we are also grateful to the honourable member for making this suggestion. We will find out what more we can do in order to enhance our engagement with them, to encourage them to join the civil service after graduation. And then for young people groups, I have to admit that for the uniform groups, like those set up under the Security Bureau, they have the foot drills or the march exercise and so on. But then for civilian grades, that might be harder to do. But then taking on board members' views, we will have to consider more of these. It should not be just confined to undergrad students. We might even go to the secondary school sector to engage them. So on the basis of what we have been doing, we'll find out what we can do to further deepen our engagement with younger students.
Next member to speak, Mr. Lai Tung Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First, according to paragraph 17 of the government paper, the government has been encouraging non-ethnic Chinese students to join the government. With the government's effort, how many non-ethnic Chinese students applied to work for the government, and how many of them successfully joined the government? Also, you said that you have provided some online Chinese language self-learning resources since 2023 for non-ethnic Chinese interns. It's been about 2 years now. Have you made an assessment on the effectiveness of these resources? Have non-ethnic Chinese students' Chinese language skills improved, which allow them to more easily join the government? Also, according to the Government Employees Association's letter, they mentioned that they would like to have better benefits for retired civil servants. Also, they want paid meals or mealtime or meal breaks that are paid. Because of various reasons, the government hasn't been able to roll out paid meal breaks for civil servants. In relation to the recommendations made by the Government Employees Association, how will the government deal with them? Will the government attend meetings with the Government Employees Association and listen to their views? Will the government, based on the recommendations made by the association, carry out studies and provide the findings of your studies to this panel? Secretary, we haven't got the letter or submission from the Government Employees Association. It's uploaded to the website. I will ask our colleagues to give you the submission. I've heard what Mr. Lai said to address the first question about non-ethnic Chinese students. I mentioned when I replied to Mr. Ronick Chan's questions that since 2023, we have been providing non-ethnic Chinese interns with online Chinese language self-learning resources. We encourage these interns to learn about the Chinese that is usually used in the office setting within the government. As I said, the resources provided for these interns within the 8 weeks' time is not enough for them to meet the Chinese language proficiency level required to join the government. We just want to give them an idea, the requirements that we impose on our candidates. We hope that after they finish the internship program, they would make use of the resources available in the community to enhance their Chinese language level. We understand that it takes time for them to improve their language skills. It takes more than just 1 or 2 years. When I chatted with them, I realized that a lot of these non-ethnic Chinese interns only manage to reach the beginner's level of Chinese language proficiency. In order to pass our recruitment exams, it does require a higher level. We believe that it's not too late for them to catch up now if they do want to join the government. We encourage non-ethnic Chinese students in primary and secondary schools to attend the Chinese language courses provided by, for example, the Education Bureau. This will make it easier for them to reach the entry requirements if they want to apply for government posts in the future. We might see changes in the coming 2 years. As mentioned when I replied to Mr. Ronick Chan's questions, since 2019, we've been launching this internship program for non-ethnic Chinese students. It's been 5 years now, and over the past 5 years, we see that one or two of these interns managed to pass the recruitment tests and joined the government in the end. This is not a huge number, but we do want to work hard, and we hope to achieve greater results in the future. In terms of the submission from the Government Employees Association, on the point about enhancing civil servants' remuneration package, we have talked to different civil service groups, and this is one of the recommendations made by the civil service groups. In this year's policy address, as well as in the last one, we have put forward some enhancement measures. As mentioned in the previous panel meetings, we want to offer a remuneration package that is closer to that of the private sector. Some of the medical benefits that we offer, they aren't provided in the private sector. We want to align with the private sector instead of rolling out revolutionary reforms. We don't think we are falling behind the private sector in this regard. The other point is about paid meal breaks. There are different ways to calculate the hourly pay for civil servants. One of the ways is to calculate the total number of working hours of civil servants. That is how many hours you work per week. And the meal time is included. Another way to calculate it is just looking at the number of working hours of civil servants, excluding the meal break. It really depends on how you calculate it. If you include the meal break into your working hours, then you can divide your pay by the number of hours you work. Same if you look at just the total number of working hours. For those who work in the disciplined services, as well as for those who work as a paramedic, they all stick to the same way of calculation. For those whose pay depend on the number of working hours, they are mostly frontline staff of the government. We always need new blood to join these frontline posts. A lot of times, they do not want to work late. And the management would allow them to have, for example, 2 breaks, and they would bring their own food, and during their breaks they would have their food. I told them that if they want to have an official lunch break, we would be able to offer such a lunch break for them, but if they take a 1-hour meal break, it would be included in their contract, and their working hours would be longer because the lunch break would be included as part of their working hours. So far, none of the staff have told us that they would want a longer working hours. If they, however, want an official lunch break, we would be able to fulfill their wish, and we will ask the relevant departments to offer an official lunch hour to them. It will just lengthen their working hours by 20 minutes, and it really depends on the preference of the frontline staff. I don't think this is the only reason why we haven't been able to recruit enough frontline staff. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you for the detailed reply. However, it seems that the Secretary hasn't addressed the concerns of the Government Employees Association. The Secretary said there are 2 breaks for the frontline staff within a day. I believe the Government Employees Association put forward this concern because this is a huge topic for them. I hope you will attend meetings with the association to understand their views. Secretary. Yes, this is one of the topics that we come across in our regular meetings with the association. Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask about opportunities for young civil servants to work overseas. I see that in 2023, under the UN Junior Professional Officers Program, there were 12 quotas. According to the government paper, civil servants have the chance to work in different international organizations, including the International Bank. How many civil servants have been sent to work in different international organizations? Also, according to the government paper, there are exchange opportunities for civil servants. They are sent to the mainland to understand about the different positions within the mainland government. The civil servants should learn about the way civil servants work in the mainland, and this will facilitate our communication with the mainland authorities. How many civil servants are allowed to join these exchange programs? Also, will you work more frequently with the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau? I know that there are some young people living in the youth hostels, and I've interviewed some of them, and I asked them whether they would consider becoming a civil servant. Some of them had never thought about it. Some felt it was boring to work for the government. So I think you have to communicate more with young people. I mentioned about the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau. This is because previously there wasn't a group that bring together different young people. However, now you have the Youth Link, and it brings together over 10,000 young people. These are young people with great potential, and we can, through these young people, learn about them, and we can tell them the development opportunities if they join the government. So the HYAB can help in this regard. Of course, you have to look at the qualifications of these young people. However, I think it would make it easier for you to attract young people if you can simply talk to the HYAB. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of offering internship opportunities overseas and broadening the horizon of our civil servants, I think this is an appeal for those who would like to join the government. Apart from working in the UN with the recommendations of the central government, we often send officers to work at the International Criminal Police Organization, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law Secretariat, as well as the Financial Action Task Force Secretariat. The headquarters of this task force is in Paris. And we also send officers to the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Secretariat, that is the APEC Secretariat. We will continue to look for opportunities so that our young civil servants have more opportunities to work in these different international organizations. Also, under our coordination, we have an exchange program with the civil servants in the mainland. We have such program with the Greater Bay Area. We've also signed agreements with 5 cities in the mainland, including Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, Wuhan, and Hangzhou. For GBA cities, we have signed an agreement with Shenzhen, and we have civil servants attending exchange programs with these cities. We have a total of 30 civil servants who are currently working in different government departments in the mainland. Last week, there was an induction program which allowed our civil servants to learn about the work of the different mainland departments.
Starting from last week, they've also been deployed to different departments, so they would start their internship program right away. Afterwards, we are also planning for the second phase of GBA internship programs, would be sending our colleagues to 5 cities, and the number of places has also been agreed under the agreement. We don't need to send an equal number of colleagues there. And because of the system and also the quotas and demand, probably we would be identifying more colleagues so that they'd be able to undergo this program. We would work very proactively on this. Last year, after we've been to Shenzhen, the 10 colleagues who have been there, and their response or feedback has been very good because they said that they had been able to broaden the horizon, and in terms of professional work and also general administrative work, they've also been able to see different ways of approaching their work. And then with regard to collaboration with the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau on youth hostel, we have also been working with the Bureau. And then in their website, we have also got civil service vacancies, advertisements put up there as well. We will work with the HYAB more proactively to identify grades and posts that are less popular. We would also be introducing more of these grades to the young people. So we will talk to the Bureau to see what we can do to attract more people to join. Next, Mr. Kwok Wai Kang or Mr. Ngan Wan Yu, I have 2 questions. With regard to the wastage rate of young civil servants when compared to other grades and other cities. So Hong Kong's young civil servants wastage rate, how does it compare with other cities? Well, we have also started the recruitment process earlier so that we would also approach penultimate year students. So will we be providing pre-job training to them so that that would also help increase the enrollment rate, and also where would these classes take place? Bureau Director, thank you. First, in terms of wastage rate of our colleagues, we haven't really done any statistics on the age profile, but then according to our statistics, some 40% actually leave the government during the initial years. So before they have been confirmed to the permanent posting. So we suspect that most of them would be young people. That's not too surprising because young people, when they find jobs, they might not stay in their first job because they might later on find out that it's not suitable for them, or that they might not want to take it as a career. So instead of waiting for 10 more years before they change to another job, they might want to do that as soon as possible. So long as we can get enough recruits, we would not be too concerned about that. How do we compare with other major cities? Well, the definition of civil servants might be different in different cities. For example, there might be federal staff and also state staff or provincial staff and so on. And in some countries, police would not be treated as civil servants. And therefore, different cities and countries would have different definition about who would be regarded as civil servants. But then we have also talked to some mainland city governments in particular. We have also talked to some consulate generals in Hong Kong. I think a common problem worldwide is that young people do not want to stay in one job for the entire life. They like to get different experiences with different careers and jobs, and therefore how do we keep them in one job or one career? Well, well, in some places, they might be permitted to switch to different disciplines and so on, but then in other places that might not be possible. And then as far as our case goes, general administration is a general grade, and therefore it might not be the same with other cities, and therefore we try to offer more training and more work experience to them. I think that's what most cities would do. Next, Mr. Kwok Wai Keong, what about pre-job training? The Bureau Director, you haven't answered my question. Yes, for penultimate year students, for those who have been given conditional offers, we would keep in touch with them. Other than pursuing their studies, if they can spare time, then we would offer them with internship opportunities. For example, if they want to join a particular department, then we would arrange for them to go to the department to have some internship programs so that they can familiarize themselves with the work. For example, the Civil Service Bureau is also responsible for the executive officer grade, and this year we have 10 internship programs for penultimate year students, and we would arrange for them to come and be interns in those departments. And there are different departments that would have EO grades, and therefore they would be able to experience different work in different departments so that they have a taste of how it works. And then what about the common abilities that they would be required when they take on such jobs? Next, Mr. Kwok Wai Keong. Thank you, Chairman. As we can see, in terms of encouraging more young talents to join the government, a lot of work has been done by the government, and I fully appreciate that. But then the most important thing is the effectiveness. And at the same time, we are concerned that after someone has joined the government, how do we keep them? How do we make sure that they stay with their job? So it's about the working environment as well as the remuneration and so on. So it's about the pay package. And now we have an establishment of 190,000, and yet there are only 170,000 people on the job. In other words, on average, everybody is doing more than what he's required to do. And if the vacancies concentrate in certain departments or certain grades, then it means that for those grades or departments, well, two people might be doing three people's jobs, or three people might be doing five people's jobs. So have you done any statistics? So what about overtime work by civil servants? So to what extent are they required to work overtime for different grades and different ranks? How serious is the situation, and to what extent would they be given overtime in lieu? So in many cases, they would have to just do it for nothing, because their OT might have exceeded the ceiling, and therefore they would only they just work overtime without any compensation. Secondly, we have noticed that there have been media reports saying that with the deficit of over $100 billion, do civil servants have to take a pay cut? Yes, it's not surprising that there might be some suggestions like that, and yet civil servants are there to provide service to the community. But if there is any destabilizing factor, or if the wastage rate goes up, that would also affect the service to the public. Yes, our civil service, of course, we do not agree to a pay cut to the civil service, but then we are also concerned about the pay rise for next year. Yes, if you look at the pay trend survey, that's the is the chance that that finding would be taken on board would be doubtful, given the current situation. That's the net indicator. But then, of course, there are pros and cons on whether or not that should be taken as the guide for any pay adjustment. But then, is there a necessity for us to continue with that because, out of the four main civil service trade unions, some have suggested that we should no longer refer to this pay trend survey findings. Well, I think they are not saying this out of frustration, but then I think there's been a lot of pressure put on them because the people are saying that the administration should just ignore that, and then they are also playing up with that. And of course, they try to ease the pressure on the government, saying that, hoping that there would be less controversy about the findings of the pay trend survey. Well, I'd just like to find out more about this. Has the government done any survey or study on this? What is the thinking of the government? What about the pay and remuneration package for civil servants? How do we make sure that they are still attractive? Bureau Director, thank you. First of all, within the civil service, if there are some vacancies that have been there for a long time, some departments would try to expedite the way of technology application. They will try to see if they can streamline the work process or workflow in order to reduce the manpower requirement for such jobs. And of course, in some cases, they would also have to require colleagues to double across in order to take up the job of the others. And if that exceeds 30 days, then acting pay would be offered, whether or not it's acting up or acting across. And then if it's for a short time, in excess of their normal working hours, then within the pay scale, for those who are under a certain pay point, well, I have to emphasize that if the working hours of one individual is in excess of his normal working hours, then OT compensation would be offered. That is, overtime in lieu would be offered to them. But then if they are above a certain pay points, then if they are not allowed to take OT compensation, then they would have to accept OT pay instead. So that would be subject to the pay point that they are at. And for the extra spending that would be incurred, we don't see that that has been so excessive that we are not able to afford it. But then in some cases, if we are able to urge the department to review the overall workflow, whether or not the workflow can be redesigned or overhauled or streamlined, or they can also apply some new technology in order to compress the whole process, that would also result in a saving in manpower and so on. That would also help. Whether or not those vacancies can be deleted altogether. Well, some departments will also have new work, and therefore, when the new recruits join the department, then they can also deploy those new colleagues to those posts. So that would mean that they don't have to cut the manpower. In fact, we have managed to reduce the establishment by 2,000. So that's about how we streamline the work process. And then for the original colleagues, they can also be deployed to the new jobs. So that's what we've been doing, and that's our view too. Secondly, is about the pay package. Very often, people might have some misgiving about our pay trend survey. So they might have taken the finding of the pay trend survey as the net indicator. In fact, the administration would look at a basket of factors, including the government's own financial position, the comprehensive spending of the community, and also the inflation, economic outlook, and government or civil servants' own aspiration, and so on and so forth. So we would add up all the factors before we come to a conclusion. The current factor is just one of the 6 factors under consideration, and that's what we've been doing. As to whether or not we can just do away with this, for the pay trend survey, that would also give us an overall idea as to what the private sector has been doing. So what's the year-on-year change in terms of pay for private sector employees? For the time being, we believe that the PTS is still helpful to us. But then once again, I have to reiterate that this is not the only consideration. The mechanism does not just include this. In fact, the mechanism would mean that we will have to take into account 6 factors instead of just 1. Chairman, I'd like to add 2 points. Yes, of course, the Bureau Director can also respond to the a question about the overtime work statistics. And secondly, even if civil servants are not going to take a pay cut, well, in the past couple of years, the pay adjustment has been lower than that in the market, and that is a fact too. I hope that the departments will also understand the sentiments of the frontline staff and also the difficulties. Thank you.
Now it's my turn. Secretary, I know that in terms of attracting young talents to join the government, the administration has rolled out a lot of measures. I think it's not very accurate to say that there's a high wastage rate within the government. I know that some civil servants transfer from one department to another. For example, I have a student who got transferred from the Home Affairs Department to another department as an administrative officer. I also know that an assistant commissioner transferred from an assistant district officer got transferred from Tuen Mun to another department within the disciplined service. Recently, I attended a recruitment or job fair held by the city bus, and they turned a storage room into a talent hub. The storage room was tiny. However, it is now converted into a place where they can hold recruitment exercises. They can also hold interviews there. It is very appealing. I went to the recruitment center myself. I feel that I'm a professional when I'm at the center. I also see that the company really valued talents, not just professionals, but mechanics, repair mechanics as well. They have a recruitment center in the headquarters in Wan Chai. In the future, will the government set up a recruitment center where you can introduce the different types of work within the government? For some candidates, after they have submitted their application forms, you can perhaps make use of that center to go over their qualifications and personal information with them. This will save you a lot of time as well as paperwork. I hope the government can take on board this suggestion. You said that you draw reference from the practices in the private sector. This is what the private sector has been doing. The chief executive mentioned that we have to make reforms. We have to change our mentality. So I hope the secretary can be more innovative. On the other hand, I'm also concerned about the wastage rate as well as the difficulties faced by the different government departments in terms of recruiting new blood. Is it because some of the staff do not follow the 5-day work week pattern? Also, for those who have left the government, do you have information showing why they left the government? Is it because of the remuneration package? Would you get more of this information so that you can improve in these areas in your recruitment exercises? This will help you attract talents to join the government to offer better services for the public. Secretary, to give you an example, in year 2023 to 24, we in total recruited about 22,000 new officers. Among them, 3,300 or so got transferred from one department to another. And for those who newly joined the government, the number stood at about 8,500. So there have been officers who get transferred from one department to another. We do not want to stop officers from moving to another department. Some civil servants, they are aggressive, and for example, some of them, they have the potential. If we stop them from moving to another department, we would end up losing them. For civil servants working at the more basic grades, they will have to work harder to get promoted. We have some 380, close to 400 grades in the government, and they impose different entry requirements. Some of them, they only need primary school qualification. Some of them, they need to have a master's degree in order to join the post. So far, we haven't had the plan to set up a centralized platform. Just now, Chairman mentioned about the Hong Kong Police Force. For clerical staff, we have had a regular recruitment center. We have year-round recruitment exercises. Candidates can go to this center to get information. They can also get information about written tests. We also hold some kind of exhibitions at the center. They can get the information they want at the center about the jobs they want to apply to. So we are gradually forming a recruitment center there. For some larger grades, the relevant government departments have dedicated officers to deal with the recruitment exercises. However, I do thank the chairman for offering the suggestions. We will see how we can streamline the application procedures for applicants. Also, candidates have to pass the Common Recruitment Examination as well as the Basic Law and National Security Law tests. We are digitalizing the two tests. We are making it more convenient for students who want to take the tests. Young people or young applicants, they can select their own time slots throughout the year to take the tests. They only need to take the test once. As long as they pass the test, they won't have to do it another time. And this helps save our time by digitalizing the two tests. Also, by doing the tests online, it will make it easier for us to release the results to them. So we are working on improving the threshold exam arrangement. So far, some 20% of the civil service posts do not follow the 5-day week pattern. For some of the grades, we can allow for the 5-day week arrangement. For others, we do not allow such arrangement. For some candidates, it is not the reason, or for some civil servants, it is not the reason causing the wastage. However, we will continue to work with the relevant government departments and bureaus so that we can reduce the number of posts that do not follow the 5-day week arrangement. In terms of whether we have tried to find out the reasons for people who choose to leave the government, for every civil servant who resigns, we try to understand the reason behind. There are many reasons. For example, some leave the government because they want to pursue further studies, and some told us that they want to work in the private sector. Very few civil servants leave the government because of the remuneration package. Of course, we can't be sure whether these are the actual reasons why the civil servants left the government, but we try to find out the reasons behind. Dr. So Chen-Wing. Thank you, Chairman. I believe all of us can feel that the government is trying hard to attract young talents to join the civil service. We can look at the recruitment figures. Every year the government recruits some 10,000 people. And young people account for the highest number of these candidates who get recruited. I, as a legislator, commend the effort of the government. I see that you've also tried to recruit university students in their penultimate year of study. However, I have questions about the internship opportunities. Every year, hundreds and thousands of civil servants or people who try to apply for civil service jobs, but you end up recruiting about 10,000 of them. Over the past 5 years, you only arranged for some 400 people to join the internship programs. That means every year, only 40 people got to join the winter and summer internship programs. In 2024, there were only about 60 interns. So there is a huge gap between the number of interns you get as well as the number of applicants who apply for civil service jobs. Internship programs are opportunities for you to allow young people to learn more about the work of the government. I understand that you have already done a lot. However, according to the government paper, you are not offering enough internship opportunities. Will you increase the number of interns so that those who aspire to work in the government can learn about the work of the government in advance? Another question I have is that according to the government paper, as the largest employer in Hong Kong, the government recruits around 10,000 people to the civil service each year. Last year, the figure stood at about 11,000 something. The gap between the establishment and the strength stood at about 10,000. So every year you are about 10,000 civil servants short. In the last meeting, the Secretary mentioned that the government had to take into account the qualifications of the candidates. However, how come every year you recruit around 10,000 people only?
Bureau Director, thank you. In fact, all government departments added together, well, we have about 4,000 fresh vacancies, so it's not a small number. As to AO, administrative officers, indeed for 2024, we have 60 vacancies, and 5 years down the road, the number of vacancies would add up to 400. But then when compared to other grades like the EOs, of course the number would be smaller, because in terms of academic qualification for EO, we only require undergrad degree. But then for AOs, we would require them to get at least second A honor, or at least third class honor, and therefore the requirement would be somewhat higher when compared to other grades. And therefore for local interns, we would also require universities to make recommendations, and when they make recommendations, well, it's not just about the academic result, it's also about their extracurricular activities or community services. The requirement will also not be low, and therefore those who are qualified would be limited in terms of the number when compared to other grades and posts, and therefore naturally the number would be relatively smaller. So that would explain why for AO grade in particular, well, adding together the summer break and also the winter break, we would only have 60 internship places. And of course we do want to have more, yet at the same time we also have to emphasize that we do have this basic requirement for the new recruits, and therefore for those undergoing internship, well, the students would also have to be eligible before they would be nominated. And why we have been saying that we need 10,000 fresh grads every year, well, that has to do with our efforts in publicizing our jobs. We have also been making efforts to streamline our work procedures and also expediting the recruitment process. As to what else we can do when it comes to recruitment, well, what we'd be focusing on would be in terms of the recruitment process. We'd like to streamline that further so that we can compress the time frame. So we're doing digitalization. We are also doing some entry tests, and also departments would also be required to deploy a certain number of staff to work on the recruitment, or else we would not be able to get enough people to fill the vacancies. So we will have to have people or colleagues deployed to doing the interviews and also to mark the papers and so on. It cannot be delayed for too long, or else those who have applied might just take up other job offers, and they would no longer be interested even if you give them the offers. So on several fronts, we have already made some progress, and therefore this year we have been able to recruit more people. And of course, I do want the figure to go up to more than 10,000. And of course, I'm giving you the average figure when I told you that the average number would be 10,000 every year. Yes, I would also call upon Hong Kong young people to consider joining the government, because in the government, the work nature would be very different from that in the private sector. And as the Bureau Director said, you would have this sense of honor and also sense of mission, and also out of among the civil servants, there is work that would be very different from that in the private sector, because you might have opportunities to go to the mainland or other countries to become interns, or you might even be able to go to the UN for certain internship programs and so on. That would be very rare opportunities that the private sector would not be able to offer. And being able to serve the community would also be an honor. And you would also be involved in our country or our state's work and so on. That would also be very rare. And I hope that the Bureau Director would work harder to recruit more people in order to help. And that would also help improve the image of the government. Next, we have this item on latest developments on the provision of dental services for civil service eligible persons. We have also invited other colleagues to join us, including those from the DH. So we have Dr. Kitty Xie, consultant from the Department of Health, and also Dr. Sharon Lee, also consultant dental surgeon from the Department of Health. So first of all, I'd like to invite the Secretary for the Civil Service to walk us through the paper number CB3999 bracket 04. Yes, the paper is about the latest developments on providing dental services to eligible civil servants. So other than other oral appliances and denture, CSEPs are able to get dental services from government dental clinics or GDCs. Because of the increase in civil servants and also because of the pandemic and also because of the wastage, the waiting time has been lengthened tremendously. First of all, I'd like to brief you on the latest developments in terms of government dental services. The DH has been recruiting very actively so that I would like to attract more people to join the grade, and they have already managed to get better results in the third and fourth quarter of this year. We have managed to get new dentists to join the department, and the vacancy rate has come down from 31% to 21%, and the DH has also looked at the dentist registration or amendment ordinance to strive to have the first batch of non-locally trained dentists to join the department so that the situation can be eased in the coming year. In order to ease the situation whereby the waiting time is excessively long, starting from July 2023, we introduced this 18-month pilot program so that for CSEPs, they can go to PDCs or private dental clinics to receive scaling services. Since the introduction of the program, we have also come to the panel as well as some other subcommittees to brief you on the situation, and we have taken on board your suggestions and comments. We have already completed the review of the private scheme. I'd like to highlight three salient points. First, the participation rate is as expected. As of the end of last month, we have invited some 280,000 CSEPs. So out of those, 143,000 people have already made appointments for scaling services, exceeding the original target of 140,000. Well, initially, the participation rate was only 25%. After we have stepped up our efforts in publicity, more people are able to hear about the program, and the rate has increased to 51% now. In other words, out of two that have been invited, one would join. Secondly, the users' feedback has been highly positive. According to the survey study, over 90% of those who have received the scaling services are satisfied or are very satisfied with the service, and some 97% of them said that they would be prepared to accept the dental services under this private-public collaboration or participation program, and that has also gone a long way in easing the pressure on the waiting time, because for CSEPs, I would be able to get the scaling services earlier than the appointment that they could get with government dental clinics. So instead of waiting for 28 months, that has substantially shortened to about 17 months in November this year. For those who have received scaling services, they'd be able to deal with their dental problem earlier. And for those who require follow-up, then within 6 to 9 months, they'd be able to get a follow-up examination by the DH or even get treatment. And then for those who have been able to get the, as many have already received the scaling services from PDCs, those who require the DH attention will also be able to get examination or consultation earlier, and other more complicated cases would also be able to get treatment earlier. So in order to get more reasonable results, we'd be prepared to extend that from the 1st of February we would extend that from 1st of February 2025 to 31st of July 2026 in accordance with the current arrangements and criteria. PDCs which are running at least 4 dental clinics would be the service providers, and they would also offer different clinics for choice by the CSEPs. And also we would also be exploring other possible service patterns. We would also be introducing this 1-year program in Shenzhen, so that some 2,000 civil CSEPs will also be able to go to Shenzhen to get the service. Earlier on, we went to Shenzhen to conduct site surveys. We have also taken into account the different circumstances in Shenzhen and also the location of the clinics, as well as the charging patterns and fee levels and so on. We have also discussed with the Shenzhen MHC, the Municipal Health Commission. We have now decided that we would use the Shenzhen New Frontier United Family Hospital as the pilot point, and then CSEPs can also go there for X-rays, and then they can also get the scaling services. The service would be somewhat broader than the local pilot scheme, and then the CSEPs can also look at their own conditions, and then they can decide whether or not they'd like to join this program. And after receiving the scaling services, all they need to do is to upload the report to the eHealth apps, and then they can also upload the information to the personal folder, and then the DH would be able to browse the report through eHealth, and then arrangements can also be made for the CSEP to go to the government clinic for follow-up action. So that would also help. We would also be paying for this pilot program through the funding that we get for the DH, and therefore there is no need for extra funding. So other than doing a good job in terms of recruitment, we will also continue to monitor the 2 pilot programs to do timely reviews in order to assess the effectiveness of the program. I'll be happy to take questions. We have 5 members who would like to ask questions. I'll read out the names first. Honorable Chow Siu Chung, Honorable Kingsley Wong, Honorable Lai Tong Kwok, and also Honorable Nixie Lam and myself. Okay. Honorable Chow Siu Chung. First, on the pilot program, well, I think the effectiveness has been quite good. I've also got some feedback, and the feedback has been very positive, and the government has been willing to listen to the civil service unions' views. And initially there was low participation rate because of a lack of publicity, and therefore there has been targeted publicity, and as a result they've been able to exceed the target by having more people join. But then I have several questions. First, if the effectiveness has been good and the administration is happy with the result, I believe that the administration is happy with that, and therefore they are now extending it by 18 months. So what about the target participation rate? So you're talking about 140,000. But then if we step up publicity, more people would be willing to join. Then would you increase the target number? And after the extension of the program, and if the feedback is satisfactory, would you regularize the program? So would that be one of your considerations? That's the first point. Secondly, with regard to this program, some civil servants are still concerned about the transparency. There is room for improvement. In particular, there was a case in which when the individual goes to the clinic for the service, the doctor or the dentist told him that he had identified a number of problems, but whether or not that case would be referred to the DHR for follow-up, the dentist told him or her that he would definitely not be making the referrals. But then the individual would not be able to know right away or after 2 weeks whether or not the PDC has already referred his case to the GDC, because according to the arrangement, he would have to wait until after another appointment has been made by the DH for him to do follow-up consultation before he will get his problems dealt with. So that's the first point. Secondly, with regard to the Shenzhen program, okay, there would be this additional X-ray check. But what about the target groups when compared to the initial program, where only scaling services would be provided? Supposedly, only those without much problem would be referred to this pilot program. So what about those who have problems? I can see that you have made some progress in terms of recruitment. Some 40 dentists have been recruited. But then out of the 40 plus GDCs, initially there were 12 that had to close because of a shortage of staff. But then with the new recruits, will you be reopening those dental clinics? How many of them will reopen? And also for the more complicated cases where follow-up consultation or treatment would be required. So in simple terms, with the 2 pilot dental services program, yes, the waiting time has been significantly shortened. But then where there is a complication, can you make use of the extra resources so that the waiting time can be shortened? And to what extent will the waiting time be shortened? 3 questions.
I think he has more than 3 questions. Let me address them one by one. On the 4th question, the number of clinics that are closed and whether we have reopened these clinics. And in terms of how much time is required for us to follow up on the complicated cases, I'll ask my colleague to elaborate. Let me address the 3rd question first. We are continuing with the 18-month pilot scheme. During the first phase, a number of colleagues who did not make an appointment because their appointment time was fixed, and they would rather have a dentist who is familiar with the situations to do the check for them. So we expected some 140,000 participants joining the first phase of the scheme. However, if there are more than 140,000 participants in the second phase, we'll try to accommodate all these participants. In terms of the number of participating service providers, we are seeing a marked increase in the second phase. So we are confident that if there are more than 140,000 participants in the second phase of the pilot scheme, we should be able to accommodate them. Say after the second phase of the pilot scheme, will we consider regularizing the scheme? Well, it's normally the government dental clinics who are responsible for civil servants who would like to get dental services. However, because of a high vacancy rate, we wanted to shorten the waiting time of civil servants. That's why we rolled out the pilot scheme. As we managed to recruit more dentists and that the vacancy rate is now reduced, we should have government dental clinics deal with all the civil servants who want to get dental services. So after the 18 months in the second phase, whether we will regularize the pilot scheme, it really depends on the vacancy rate and how well the newly recruited dentists are adapting to their positions. So it's hard for us to make a conclusion or a decision now. Mr. Chow Xiu-chung also mentioned whether we can enhance the transparency. Well, the case raised by Mr. Chow was rather special. We have over 140,000 participants in the first phase of the scheme, and we only got less than 50 complaints. And among these 50 complaints, there were very few that came across a very complicated situation. We welcome civil servants to share with us their experience. We signed agreements with the participating service providers. If the dentist from the private sector identifies any complicated oral problems, they'll have to submit a report to the Department of Health, which is going to take follow-up action afterwards. If civil servants have any unpleasant experiences like this, please let us know. Normally, the Department of Health, after receiving such a report, they will be able to take follow-up actions within 6 to 9 months' time. So in general, we see that participants of the pilot scheme haven't come across situations like this. Now, on the target group for the pilot scheme in Shenzhen, participants will be able to receive oral imaging check or X-ray check. We will first deal with new consultation cases which have not been dealt with by the Department of Health previously. So this additional service will be provided to civil servants in need or eligible persons in need. We will first handle the new consultation cases and then we will deal with the old cases. Yes, Dr. Hui, thank you for the questions. This year, we made an improvement in terms of our recruitment. As mentioned by the Secretary, so far this year we've been able to recruit dozens of candidates. In September and October alone, we have 10-odd officers who joined their new posts. In Q1 2025, we will reopen some of the dental clinics that were previously closed. For more complicated cases, it really depends on which type of specialist services they require. Say for oral maxillofacial surgery, people will have to wait for 20 to 40 months. For other types of services that concerns patients with periodontal diseases, the waiting time is about 9 months. So we are seeing an improvement here. For civil servants who have urgent needs, they can, during office hours, visit the government dental clinics or the clinics they normally visit for emergency services. For such emergency services, no prior reservation or appointment would be required. They can go to any of the government dental clinics, and there are no specific quotas for these cases. And our dentists will examine the patient on the spot. Next member to speak, Mr. Kingsley Wong. The Civil Service Bureau has taken on board a lot of the suggestions made by members. I see that a lot of improvement has been made in terms of the delivery of dental services for civil servants. I'm glad that the government is trying out some new ideas. For example, the government has been making use of the private sector to alleviate manpower problems as well as to reduce waiting time for civil servants. This is a good start. I see that the satisfaction level is at 90%, and the waiting time has been reduced from 28 months to 17 months. But this is not enough. Dentists always say we have to get scaling service once every 6 months. So even if the waiting time is reduced to 7 months, is not enough. Can you make sure that civil servants can get scaling service once every 12 months? I think this is a more reasonable target. Another question is that civil servants only get scaling service. In the private sector, they don't get filling service or extraction. For example, can tooth extraction or filling be included in the services provided by the private sector? Dental therapists can also handle such services. You don't necessarily need dentists to do these. A lot of times, civil servants, after getting scaling services in the private sector, they have to wait for another round to get their tooth extracted or to get filling service. Also, after you've tried out the pilot scheme in Shenzhen for a year, will you extend the scheme to other mainland cities? For this scheme, it is most popular among retired civil servants who now live in the mainland. They don't want to travel so long to come back to Hong Kong just to get the scaling service. For example, will you extend the scheme to Zhongshan or Guangzhou to offer more convenience to retired civil servants? Thank you. Secretary. On the point about scaling service, our goal is that we can reduce the waiting time for services offered by clinics under the Department of Health to a reasonable level. As we continue to recruit dentists and as we carry on with the pilot scheme, we are confident that we'll be able to further reduce the waiting time. This is our target. Under the pilot scheme, we invite civil servants and eligible persons to join the scheme once every 12 months. Will we extend this pilot scheme to cover other types of dental services? Well, when we designed the pilot scheme, we have taken this into consideration. Other types of dental services are rather complicated, and we have to monitor the quality of services provided by the private sector. We're adopting this private partnership model, but we're not leaving everything for the private sector to deal with. We have to control and monitor the service quality. For more complicated cases, problems might arise if too many types of services are covered by this pilot scheme. Also, we have to make sure effective use of public funds. We also have to make sure that we are using the manpower effectively. Whether the case is a simple filling procedure, we have to depend on the judgment of the Department of Health. So we have to strike a balance here. We do not have plans to include more complicated services into this scheme at this stage. For dental hygienists, they might be able to help deliver services, but we don't have enough dental hygienists in Hong Kong. So it's not that the private sector can take up the workload if we include more services into the pilot scheme. Can you allow dentists or dental hygienists in the private sector to take care of tooth extraction as well as filling under the pilot scheme? Well, as mentioned, the Department of Health will have to monitor the service quality. These services, compared to scaling services, they are more complicated. If we leave all these services to be provided by the private sector, problems might arise. If problems arise, we'll have to deploy manpower from the Department of Health to take care of the problems. We'd rather have the manpower from Department of Health to deal with areas that concern their profession. On the pilot scheme in Shenzhen, we'll have to first assess whether the pilot scheme in Shenzhen is successful. How much of a help can this pilot scheme offer? Then we will decide whether we'll continue with the pilot scheme and whether we will expand the pilot scheme. Apart from conducting site visits, we have to look at the location of the relevant medical institutions, the price level of the services provided by these medical institutions. We'll also have to talk to the Shenzhen Municipal Health Commission when we decide whether to expand the scheme.
Chairman, we really hope that you can consider our proposal. I believe that while the GDCs, dentists, and hygienists are able to deal with those issues, I believe that their counterparts in the private sector should also be able to take up simple tasks like filling and extractions. Well, for complicated cases, of course, we are not suggesting that those should be included. But then for filling and also extractions, the price in the private sector should be easy to calculate. So please do consider that. Yes, we'll consider that later. But then for the next 18 months, we'll still be focusing on scaling services. While for filling and extractions, it's not like scaling. Sometimes the price levels might be different because you might be talking about 2 or 3 teeth that would require filling, and to what extent would filling services be required, and the charging levels might be different. So by the time when the dentists find out that there are problems and you have to get back to the DH to talk about this, there might be some problems in terms of interfacing. Because after all, if government dentists are dealing with that, then basically they just provide the service and that's it. But then if it's done by the private sector, then it's a little more complicated. But then if the shortage problem with dentists continue, then you would also have to consider that. Next, Honorable Lai Tong Kwok. First of all, we welcome the government's proposal. That's a piece of good news that the government is now prepared to allow CSEPs to get more services. So some 2,000 will be set aside for a Hong Kong-funded family hospital to provide the scaling services in Shenzhen. Recently, in one of the YouTube clips, I've also seen a clip on this new hospital. It's very nice. And also, according to those who have been there, the checkup rate is a lot cheaper than that in Hong Kong. It's just about 1/4. What's my question? Well, para 24 of the paper makes it very clear. Right now, you can only go there for scaling, and then you can also do some oral imaging check. That's a little more than what you can do in Hong Kong. And I noticed that you've also introduced the health coupons for senior citizens. So that can also be used on the mainland, and that would also cover the hospital that I referred to just now. In other words, for those elders with senior health coupons, they can also go to this hospital to get dental services, comprehensive dental services, and of course the money will be deducted from his health coupons. So my question is, well, for the Bureau is of the view that this hospital services would be up to standard, or else you would not have chosen that hospital as the hospital running the pilot scheme. So how come you are not prepared to allow them to provide more services than just scaling and oral imaging or X-ray check? If the charges are a lot cheaper than that provided by the government, then why don't you consider allowing them to do a bit more? I understand that the Civil Service Bureau must have considered this. I'd just like to know the rationale behind your decision. Para 26 says that after the CSEPs have got the service, they would have to upload their medical report through their mobile phones onto the personal folder of their eHealth app, and then the staff will be able to access the report. So I just click on the eHealth, and then it makes it very clear that after uploading the report to the personal folder, you will have to notify the staff of the DH before they'll be able to browse the report. So I'd like to know whether or not you can further streamline that procedure, so that, for example, if I get the scaling service as well as the X-ray check in Shenzhen, then why can't the Shenzhen hospital directly send the report to the DH with the consent of the patient, so that the patient doesn't have to do all these? Because yes, uploading the report to the eHealth app is very simple, but then let's not forget that we have many retired civil servants and their family members simply might not know how to use the apps. So is there any room for you to further enhance it? Thank you. Bureau Director. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, for the Shenzhen pilot scheme, why is it confined to scaling and X-ray check? Well, it's not that we have any doubt about the standard of service of that Shenzhen hospital, as I've already said in my earlier reply. That is what is the best way of making use of our resources. That's number one. And number two, in the whole administrative process in terms of monitoring, as well as what we are offering to our colleagues if we were to do it. So it's not like balloting, it's not like by way of invitation. It's about whether or not such cases should be picked up by the private sector, and what is to be left to the government sector. So should we allow the private sector to take up all these services, or should some of these services remain in the government sector? Which is the better approach? So that's what we are considering. And of course, those are two different issues when it comes to allowing the elderly to use their health coupons in Shenzhen and other cities on the mainland. So we're just trying to use different ways to provide dental services to CSEPs, given the fact that the DH is suffering from a manpower problem, so that the waiting time would not be unreasonably long for CSEPs. So that's the purpose of the scheme, because we're trying to strike a balance between providing services to CSEPs and at the same time not overloading our DH colleagues, because we don't want them to do a lot of extra administrative work because of our extension of the services in terms of scope and time. So that's of course one of the issues that we can review when we review the pilot scheme. And then for CSEPs, to require them to upload their medical reports through their own mobile apps, that's also out of the consideration for the protection of personal privacy, because after all, it involves personal data that would have to be transmitted from Shenzhen to Hong Kong. And therefore, the safest way is to provide the information to the patient, and then for the patient to upload it to the apps. Yes, the patient will have to inform the health authorities after he has uploaded the report onto the apps. But then for CSEPs, if they go to the New Frontier United Family Hospital in Shenzhen to do it, then a QR code will be provided to them. It's like what is being done at the Hong Kong PDC. So there would be a QR code provided to the person concerned, and then they would also have to include that QR code in the eHealth app before the funding would be transferred by the DH to that PDC, and that QR code from the Shenzhen New Frontier United Family Hospital can be transmitted to the DH, and then the DH would be able to tell that that patient has already received the scaling services in Shenzhen. And with the consent of the person involved, we can also explore whether or not that can be further streamlined in terms of the submission of the medical report to the DH. Well, we have 2 more members who would like to ask questions, and there is also this AOB to deal with, so I'll extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Next, Honorable Nexi Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I think our colleagues have already asked many questions that I would have wanted to ask, so I'll be focusing on others. Yes, the scheme will be extended, and apparently the feedback has been rather positive. But what I'd like to know is, given the long queue, to what extent have we been able to shorten it? And also after the extension of time, so to what extent are you going to improve that? Because after all, only 51% of the invitees have taken up the offer. I understand that you have also done some focus groups discussions to ask those who have received the service. But then what about those whom you have invited but then who have not taken up the offer? We would also like to find out why they have not taken up the offer, so that that would also help improve the situation. Or, for example, some might say that I don't want to go back to the mainland to receive the services. So other than those who have taken up the offer, what about those who have not taken up the offer? You will also have to find out why, so that you'll be able to have a comprehensive picture of how the scheme works. Yes, other than scaling services, some other colleagues have suggested that we should add other services. It's not just about extraction or more complicated services. Some imaging checks. I'm not a dentist. I don't know exactly what those items are, but then can you consider broadening the scope of the services? For example, well, there might be some prior checks that could also be included. So other than scaling services, what other treatments or services would you think can be added into that program? Because other than scaling services, what about other services that might be okay? So I might think the scaling is okay, but then if you ask me to go there for root canal treatment, then I might not want to do that at all. So you might as well ask these questions before you consider the way forward. Bureau Director. Well, for the local pilot scheme, so Hong Kong PDCs will run the service, and we have also asked the invitees who have declined the offer why they would not accept the offer. Some said that, well, it's okay for me to make an appointment with the GDC because the waiting time is not that long, and therefore I'm prepared to wait. And then others might have other reasons. For example, given their oral condition, they'd like the GDC to follow up for them. And others might not be very clear about the scope of the scheme because initially we might not have given them all the details, and therefore some might prefer to stay with the government dental clinics. And then with the Shenzhen scheme, we would also be doing the same. We would try to find out what the feedback is from our colleagues. As to whether or not we'd ask our colleagues, other than scaling and oral imaging, what other services would they prefer to be included in the scheme, we would not be asking them individually, because where there is any room for expansion, considering the resources and staffing and so on, if there is any room for expansion of the scheme, we would also need professional input. So we would be talking to our dental staff in the DH, whether or not they can identify certain services that can be included in the service, which would be more consistent with the current service without further complication or follow-up action required. So we would need professional assessment. And then we would also have to talk to our civil service trade unions. Well, for these two schemes, whether it's the local scheme or the Shenzhen scheme, we have had very close contacts with the trade unions, and then we have already got the feedback from them before we design the terms of the scheme. And I would not rule out the possibility of talking to trade unions, but then we would not be able to do that individually because the views would be very scattered and fragmented. But then if there is a chance to expand the scheme, then first of all, we will have to listen to the professional views of the DH before we decide on the way forward. Okay, I'm glad in hearing the answer to the first part, and they said that it's very quick and efficient. So I think what is more acceptable to them, for example, if I can wait for 3 more months, then it would be okay. But then if it's 4 months, then it would be too long. So what's the threshold for the waiting time? Well, some colleagues said that they only need to wait for another 3 or 4 months, then it would be their turn, and therefore they'd rather go to the GDC for their checkup. Next, it's my turn. Bureau Director, this pilot scheme initially might not be very well known to the CSEPs, and therefore the participation rate was not high. And some of them were concerned about the quality of service in the private sector, and that's the reason why they would be hesitant. But then after a while, after some exchange with their fellow colleagues, they might have noticed that the private sector services might be even better than those that they can get from the government. Well, some said that at the government clinic, the scaling services would be so poor that they would be bleeding and so on. And in the private sector, the services might be better. And therefore, they might have thought that they are guinea pigs if they take up the offer. So you will have to step up publicity. But then I'm also concerned about quality monitoring, because in the past, when you try to outsource the services to the private sector, I understand that the DH had actually outsourced the injection services. For example, I remember when I took the measles vaccine, when I went to the private sector, after getting the injection, they would also do a lot of promotion, asking me to do vaccination for other diseases and so on, and I was very annoyed. And therefore, I haven't heard from civil servants that they have got any service promotion from the PDCs, but then you will have to step up monitoring. And also in terms of education and publicity, you would also have to do a bit more in order to encourage more CSEPs to take up the service. So they should be given a chance to express their views, and you should also find out from them which clinics would be better, which would be more problematic. There should be a platform for them to express their views. For those who are doing well, then they should be recognized. And then for those that are not doing that well, the situation should also be known. But then according to the DH, you've been able to recruit more dentists, and therefore the situation might be improved, and some of the dental clinics can also be reopened. But then according to what I have been involved in, that is when I was involved in the deliberation of the dentist registration amendment bill, other than recruiting more dentists, would you also be hiring more paramedics to help with the services? So can you give us more information as to the staffing arrangements for government dental clinics when compared to the private sector? Thank you.
Secretary, let me give you a brief response, and on the assisting staff, I'll ask my colleagues to respond. In terms of whether we have launched any promotion in the private sector, according to our contracts and agreements with the private sector, they cannot sell or promote any of their services to our civil servants. So we haven't seen any such situations yet. Second, on collection of data, we have held focus group discussion meetings. We've also done questionnaire interviews. We are happy to listen to any views from the civil service unions. On assisting staff or dental assistants, we have been holding year-round recruitment exercises. There will be changes in terms of training to be offered to them and the work that they will take up. I'll ask the DH to tell you more. Yes, Dr. Hu. In July this year, the Dentist Registration Amendment Bill was passed. The provisions will start to take effect in January the 1st, 2025. According to the amended ordinance, some non-locally trained dentists will be able to practice in Hong Kong through limited registration as well as special registration. The Department of Health in July this year started recruiting non-locally trained dentists. We've got enthusiastic responses. We've already completed some face-to-face interviews. When the legislation takes effect on the 1st of January 2025, the non-locally trained dentists will be able to complete the registration and join the Department of Health. As for dental hygienists as well as dental therapists, the provisions concerning them will only take effect in 2026. Currently, we are sticking to the old provisions in terms of our recruitment. So there hasn't been any changes in terms of our recruitment. However, starting from 2026, after the dental hygienists and therapists are registered, we will be able to follow the new provisions or legislations. They will be allowed to deliver certain services or take up certain types of work without the presence of a dentist. We are now preparing for the changes and see whether we can implement any improvement measures in this regard. I understand that the Civil Service Bureau has put in a lot of effort and resources on this. I hope the civil servants will participate in the pilot scheme to make good use of the resources. I also hope that civil servants will pay more attention to their oral health. Thank you. We've wrapped up this item. Next agenda item, any other business? If not, this is the final meeting of this year. I thank members for supporting me to be the chairman of this panel. I also thank the administration for attending the meetings and taking part in the discussions and providing valuable opinions and comments over the past year. I hope the remuneration package of the civil servants will continue to be improved. I hope civil servants will continue to deliver good services for the public. That's all for the meeting today. Thank you.